Hey, so welcome back. This is part 2 of Phases of the Moon. And if you watched the first video, you probably noticed a couple things that I didn't mention that was on the screen. And so let me go to one of those. And you probably saw on this slide that we had all of these blocked out portions. And I did that just because I wanted you to focus in on this middle part. And also in the last video we did not speak at all about these in-between phases, right here, 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 and here. We concentrated just on the new moon, first quarter, full moon, and this was the third quarter. So if you think about this as a cycle, and it takes about a month for the cycle to go all the way around the Earth, you know, the cycle begins with what they call the new moon. So if you consider this as the starting point, this is the new moon, and then it comes all the way around, and we said this was first quarter. This in-between part they call a waxing crescent. Waxing, if you look up the word waxing, I'm not even sure what the definition would be actually, but if you think of it as growing, then that would be a help. And then first quarter, waxing gibbous, and then here of course is our full moon, and then here waning gibbous. Gibbous refers, I think, to the shape of what's left over here, because this is the depiction of what we would see in the sky, and so we would see most of it, almost a complete full circle, but a little bit of shade in the way. So this is a waning gibbous, and that waning means to become smaller, if you think of it that way. So you can see that the shadow is coming from the right to the left, and then in the third quarter the shadow moves over more from right to the left, and we get this view of half of the moon. And then a waning, again, waning getting smaller, so our view of the moon is getting smaller and smaller, waning crescent. So again, here we have our new moon, waxing crescent. So waxing meaning getting bigger. We're seeing this crescent, like a croissant, this crescent in this shape, and it's getting bigger because the shadow is moving again right to left, and the amount that we see of the moon is getting larger and larger. Here's our first quarter, we see more of the moon, and then here's our waxing, we're seeing more and more, our moon is getting bigger. Gibbous, and the gibbous again is refers to, you know, almost the full circle. I'm not quite sure, honestly, of the exact definitions of it, but I think it's easier to remember if you put it in those terms. So then we get our full moon, our waning gibbous, so almost the full circle, waning again meaning that is getting smaller, and the shadow is going to cover up more of it. Here the shadow is covering up more, here the shadow is almost covering it all, and then we go back to new again. If we go to the next slide, and I block out this middle portion, you can kind of see all of the different phases of the moon. New, and if you start from new, and you just pay attention to the shadow, and understand that the shadow always moves from right to left, you can kind of put together where you are in the rotation, in the cycle here. Alright, so here, and you see that, you know, here's the shadow, and it's moving right to left always, so it must be early in the cycle. And since you only see a little portion of it, the shape of a croissant or a banana, a sliver of it, it would be a crescent. And since the shadow is moving off, and you know, the next few days you're going to see more and more of the moon, it's waxing. Here, this is the gibbous shape where it's almost the full circle. And in the next few weeks, you say to yourself, where will the shadow be in the next few days? The shadow will be moving to the left, and it'll be off of it. You'll see more of the moon. Alright, so whenever you're going to see more of the moon in the next few days, then you are in a waxing mode. So it waxes. Now we have full. Here's our gibbous shape, almost a full circle. Alright, here's our shadow, starting on the right, and like we said, it goes from right to left. And so in the next few days, the shadow will be moving more to the left, covering up more of the moon, and so it's getting smaller, and the word for it getting smaller would be waning. And here's our third quarter, more of the shadow starting to cover up the moon, so it is, waning again, getting smaller. And then here, the shape of the crescent, the shadow is on the right, moving to the left. In the next few days, it will cover it up more to remind you that this is a waning crescent. And then here we have a full diagram of it. Let me get rid of this. Hide that. Alright, so here's our new. And they added one young, a young phase. Usually you're not going to see that in the books. A waxing crescent. So here's our crescent shape of a crescent. And the shadow, again, moving right to left. So we're going to be seeing more and more of the moon as the days go on. A waxing quarter. Here's our waxing gibbous. Right, waxing quarter, that's another name for our first quarter. Here's our full moon. And then the shadow's going to start reappearing, going from right to left. And so here's our shadow, and here's the gibbous shape. The shadow's moving from right to left. Alright, and so we're going to see less and less of the moon, so it's waning. This is our third quarter. Here's the shape of our crescent. And the shadow is on the right, moving to the left. We're going to see less and less of it. And again, that is waning. So take a look at it, study it, pause it, and hopefully you'll come to understand, be able to recognize every phase just by looking at the moon. So if I give you a test and I just give you a diagram with a shadow, you would be able to tell me exactly what phase it is, or give it a name. So that's part 2, and we'll cut it off here, and then in part 3 I'll talk about lunar and solar eclipses, and explain why we don't have an eclipse every month. So see you on the next video.